house after we moved. Okay, we moved into that house. And I said it then. They will take me out of here in a crib. Okay? I ain't moving. All right? Katrina comes in and washes my shit away.
Right.
So this is it.
Right.
Okay? They're going to come in with the coroner's wagon and take me out of here because I ain't moving again.
Surprised Jan wanted to. She wanted to get out. She wanted to get out in the burbs.
She is a suburb girl her whole life, and just never could handle the city. Always looking over her shoulder. If somebody came in looking like a hippie, okay, or hipster, she was like, I'm like, believe me, you ain't got to be afraid of no hipster.
Please do not be afraid of hipsters.
Okay, don't be afraid of a hipster.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we do like we always do. We'll cover the home teams, the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, LSU, Tulane, and we're going to try to throw a little UNO in there today as well. Got a great guest for you. He's doing it solo. Love to have him one-on-one. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is our guest. Sean, welcome to the show. Always great to have you, my friend. And if you would, tell the folks a little bit about what's going on with your award-winning blog, how folks can follow you on social media, but most important, what's happening over at Fox 8.
Well, it's good to be with you. Good to be back here inside New Orleans. Always fun to be back. Yeah, look, it's a busy time of year for us with the NFL free agency period kicking off. The Saints, obviously, as we know, started off with a bang that no one really saw coming. So we'll be Fox 8 to 4, 5, 9, and 10 every night. Our Final Play show every Sunday night at 10:30. My blog is the At the Further Review blog on fox8live.com. That's been updated 2 or 3 times a day for the last couple of days. And then we're social media-ing away, if that's a word, with Twitter at Sean Fazende. So it is a busy time. It is a fun time. And it's a time where, you know, we had to step up and do a lot of work. And it's been fun, though. Yeah,
it's always fun about this time of year. You know, you were hoping that LSU can maybe get into the tournament. Doubtful. We'll talk about that later. March Madness is coming. Even if you're a casual basketball fan, you got to get involved in that. And it's free agency. You know, the chance to replenish your team when you're looking at it from the NFL side, and then spring football when it comes to the college football as well. Well, the Saints signed Kobe Fleener. What is it? A backloaded contract, 5 years, $36 million. $14 million guaranteed, $2.4 million cap hit this year, $7.2 million cap hit next year, and then the last 2 years of the deal, it kind of kicks up to about 9.5, I think 9.7. A lot of people kind of shocked by this. I was shocked only because of the defensive needs, but I kind of get where they're going because. First of all, you lose Ben Watson, who was a great locker room guy, but had a career year at 35 years old. You had the unknown in terms of Josh Hill and whether he was ever going to develop. Obviously, Hooman, you brought him back as well. But you've needed another weapon on the offensive side, especially in the receiving core. And everybody was talking about maybe getting another receiver in the draft. Maybe get him a receiver in free agency. Well, Breeze loves tight ends. And if you look at the success that Jimmy Graham has had here and now Ben Watson, Yeah, and you look at Fleener just on his measurables and his ability to be able to catch the football, even though he's not a great blocker, he instantly becomes another weapon for this team. So, again, defense,
Right.
but I understand their mindset going after Fleener.
Yeah, and you know what? I think the organization, I even blogged about this, I think they were a little surprised that not only was Ben Watson such a hot commodity on the open market by the Baltimore Ravens, but that quickly. I mean, he's a 35-year-old tight end. You usually don't see that as a day one signing. So I think that caught them off guard, and I think tight end was probably not priority number one. In fact, I know it was not priority number one in free agency, but what happened was when you lost Ben Watson and you combine that loss with Marcus Colston,
Yes, great.
which is a huge part of this offense in terms of what they do, in terms of getting down the field, running that seam route. It is the signature route of this offense. They had no one that could do it. I think it became priority number one, and you saw a lot of tight ends come off the board, and Ladarius Green didn't even, it seemed like they were high on him, but I don't know if they even got inside the agent room, if you will. So Kobe Fleener was the next option. I think it was maybe slightly overpaid, but he's 7.2 average per year. That ranks 12th in the NFL right now, so that's not a terribly overpaid contract. If you really look at it, it's either a 2-year, $14.4 million contract or a 3-year, $20 million contract. So I'm not as I understand, like you. I understand what they were thinking, and I think potentially it could be not a good move, but a great move if he comes in, he learns the offense, his particular skill set marries well with what Drew Brees does well, and that is throw that seam route. He is a pass-catching tight end.
Yes.
He could have the impact of a Jimmy Graham or a Tyler Eifert type if he learns this offense and stays healthy. So I actually like the move. I'm not in love with the contract, but I understand why they had to do what they had to do. Thus, Kobe Fleener is now a Saint.
Well, and look, I think Brees, even though he comes, again, from Indianapolis, played with Andrew Luck at Stanford, they have an incredible relationship. He had a little down year last year. He's going into an offense that's tight end friendly,
Indeed.
and you see what Brees has done with the tight ends in this offense since he's been here. And as you mentioned, something that I don't think I haven't heard anyone else mention this. It's a combination of the loss of Watson and Colston.
Look, Colston and Jimmy Graham ran a lot of the same route concepts on each side of the field to the point where you could call them both wide receiver tight end hybrids. Now, with Kobe Fleener, you know going in, you're not getting blocking, right? He is a pass-catching tight end. Jimmy Graham, cut from the cloth of Jimmy Graham and a Marcus Colston type. So to lose both Watson, who is an all-around tight end, and Marcus Colston, you are all of a sudden just bare when it comes to the signature route of this offense. And just think of all the big plays of Marcus Colston and Jimmy Graham over the years, and you had no one that can do that. And you have to find someone to work in sync with Drew Brees. And that route and a player that can perform that skill set, to me, is exactly what they can bring for Brees. And I think Kobe Fleener is a good fit in that regard.
Right. And I think he helps Brandon Cooks as well. We talked about the fact that it didn't really kind of come to the fruition that, Jimmy Graham would be a guy that would really help Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks has come into his own now, kind of figuring out what routes he really runs well. Him and Brees have got a little connection. It gives, there's no double teaming now a guy like Brandon Cooks. You've got to respect Fleener and what the Saints offense does when it comes to the tight end.
Look, and that offense started slow, but it picked up by the end of last year, especially the final quarter of that season. So you had a weapon like this where hopefully, look, I was high on C.J. Spiller last year. I just didn't realize he would have such a struggle gaining the system, and I didn't realize how unnatural of a pass catcher he really was. Kobe Fleener is not like that at all. He is a tight end that can get down the field, an athletic guy. So you combine that with a guy like Brandon Cooks, who, as you said, is really coming into his own, got an Antonio Brown type skill set, a route diversity, can go deep, can go across the middle, can run shorter routes. So I think it's a good combination. And you're talking about a finely tuned offense, adding another weapon. And I think, look, that's more the same year in and year out with the Saints offense.
And we're going to get back to the offense in a moment, but the big problem is on defense.
Yeah, of course.
And it also is a situation, as you and I were talking about before we came on air, the Saints don't have a lot of cap money. So when you look at the type of contracts that are being doled out right now for defensive players, they can't even get into the room.
It's unbelievable. The type of what they need, which is pass rusher, defensive tackle, the amount of money that is being spent. Vernon got 5 years, $85 million. Malik Jackson, 5 years,
Ridiculous.
6 years, $90 million. The Saints cannot afford that. So a little bit has to do with the new cap, higher cap, which means higher contracts that get that. But there is no way the Saints could have been that type of player, the big-time players on the defensive market, just because look at the contracts these guys signed. The Saints had no room to spend that kind of money.
I would agree. Now, there's been some talk. Nick Fairley's on the radar of the Saints. Look, I loved him coming out of Auburn. Who didn't like? Again, he was a dominant player in the SEC. He dominated college football. But we do know, again, he was a guy that took plays off. You had to when you got to motivate a guy that that plays in the NFL. That's a problem. I don't want to say really off the field issues, but he has been known to be maybe a little problem in the locker room. But the Saints are in a position now where they're kind of, I don't want to say they're bottom feeding there, but that's kind of where they need to be looking right now in terms of maybe going out and getting a defender. What do you think about Fairley? What do you think about his skill set? What do you think he could bring to this team? And do you think that they're serious about Fairley?
Yeah, I think there's some serious interest there. I don't know if it's going to get to the point of a signing. It certainly could. Am I in love with it? No. But when you get to that second and third and fourth tier free agency, this is what you get. You either get a guy with character concerns or a guy that has some baggage in terms of effort concerns, or you get an aging veteran. That's just what you get on the free agent market. So I understand why there is interest, and I could certainly see him bringing him in and give it a shot, because at some point you got to take a chance with this guy, with these guys. And what I'm concerned with, though, and I know we'll probably get to it in a second, is they're running out of cap space. My calculations, I had them at about $3.5 million in cap space left. They are getting lower and lower in terms of cap space. So, the elephant in the room eventually has to be addressed with Drew Brees' contract. So, all these things working to make this puzzle fit. So, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I do think Fairley is a player that, he's got an upside and he fits what they need. He's worth rolling the dice on.
We go back to the defense. Let's talk Drew Brees, because I'm surprised. We talk, on and off the air. You're surprised. I don't know how they can get this deal done early. Okay, was Peyton had said, we're going to get this done fairly quickly. You weren't not that far away. Tom Condon goes on radio this week and says, "Look, man, we haven't really even talked. We're 2 weeks away from even meeting," and it didn't make a lot of sense to me, considering you don't have a lot of cap room. You don't have a lot of wiggle room like you've had in the past to be able to go back to players and restructure their deals to open up cap room. You got a very limited amount of players you can do that with now. And as I mentioned to you, Sean, off the air, and I've mentioned on the radio show today, every time a quarterback signs, the price goes up. So it makes no sense to me on why they didn't do this early, especially now, especially if you want to be a player with some of those defenders that are out there where you need maybe a little bit more cap room. Your thoughts?
I would have thought that would have been the first thing to do. Let's get Drew Brees' extension out of the way. Let's see how much cap space we have because of this new extension, and let's get to work on what we need. Now you kind of have this hovering out there, and you just don't know what to do, right? Because at some point you have to address it, and it's almost as if you kind of get the feeling like, at least what I see is, are they avoiding each other? Is Tom Condon and Mickey Loomis avoiding each other? This seems pretty easy, but now you have Joe Flacco's deal. You have Tom Brady's deal. Drew Brees' backup from 6 years ago got $21 million, and he's still a backup from the Philadelphia Eagles. Brock Osweiler, who's got 6 starts, is getting $18 million a season. So it's to the point now where these deals, it has to impact what they're going to do with Drew Brees, because Tom Condon is very smart. Drew Brees is very smart. They know Drew Brees' worth, and they know, look, the more these players get these contracts that, quite frankly, Drew Brees is better than, the price goes up and it keeps going up.
Also a situation where when you look at Brees right now, could you see him playing under that $30 million cap figure? Can they afford to allow him to play under the $30 million cap figure?
You're going to start looking for some money elsewhere. I mean, you'd probably have to maybe cut Zach Strief, maybe restructure Jarvis Byrd. I get the feeling the organization as a whole has shifted that mindset where they're only going to do that unless they absolutely have to. You can maybe do something with Thomas Morstead's contract and or release him. But like I said, I calculate about $3 to $3.5 million in cap space. So if that is indeed the case, you're done with free agent spending at this point, and you only had 62 to 63 players. So no, I don't see that happening. It's going to be addressed. It has to be addressed, because this organization really cannot move forward with their offseason plans without addressing Drew Brees' contract.
I'm with you, Sean. It's kind of mind-boggling at this point why it has not gotten done. as free agency. I think a lot of us thought this would be done before the NFL New Year kicked in. With that said, on the offensive side of the ball, I've always felt that the guard position was a position you had to go to in free agency. You look through the guards that are out there, and you did a great job of talking about the players that may be on the Saints' radar for Fox 8. As I look and I see these guys coming off the board, a lot of teams are holding on to their own if they can. But do you feel comfortable with Sergio Clemente and Tim Alito? Clemente has signed a new deal. Alito has been tendered now, possibly going into this season as the starting guards.
I don't feel comfortable. I'm sure the organization does not feel comfortable because those are guys that have had opportunities, haven't always made the most of those opportunities. I think there are guys you can count on if you need them in terms of serviceable, but I think you can certainly upgrade. I would think not only do you bring in a veteran guard, you also draft a guy, and that'd be 4 guards there, and you let those guys compete and battle it out. The top guy on my list was Alex Boone. He just signed with the Minnesota Vikings. The guy I'm looking at now is an Evan Mathis, just because he's 35, probably still has a little juice left, and you could probably get him on the cheap. But again, those are the types of players that you're going to get right now on the open market. So I think that's got to be addressed, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if that is addressed before defensive help, just because the price for those guys may be a little cheaper to manage.
And I liked Ramon Foster and Boone. Foster re-signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You mentioned Boone with now with the Vikings. And I'm going to tell you, if you look at the list, it's getting to be slim pickings, okay? And bringing in a quality guy that can come in and start for you. Again, knowing the way the Saints play their offense, the way their blocking scheme is, it's inside out. You got to be strong at the point of attack with your guards and your center. You got the center, but right now, it's up in the air unless the Saints really truly have a belief in Clemente and Alito that they can come in and do it. And I'll say this: I don't have that belief right now. Maybe some of the members of the media do. Maybe the fan base does. I certainly don't. It's when you're talking about bringing in a kicker. Okay, but that's usually not even on the radar. But in the Saints' case,
it's very relevant.
It is. Forbath is brought back for another year. They bring in Josh Scobie, again, longtime Jacksonville kicker, was with Pittsburgh. Said he had a hip flexor tear or something that really cost him his season with Pittsburgh. Your thoughts?
I like the idea of going into camp with an open competition, but with 2 guys that have experience. Unlike last year, 2 guys that had never kicked before in an NFL game. So I like the move to bring in Josh Scobie. I was looking at he had an 81% accuracy rate up until last year. And Pittsburgh was a little bit like New Orleans last year. It's kind of was where kickers went to die. So it was just that has been the one thing, or I should say not the one thing, but that and a defensive coordinator, that they can never seem to find a comfort level with any kicker that they have. So at the very least, you have 2 veterans that you're bringing in. Hopefully they can get the job done. I know you and I know Larry Holt. I think he described it perfectly, the Bermuda Triangle of kickers in New Orleans. So, but there's so many close games that you have to have someone you can count on, and they really haven't had that since maybe 2009, 2010 with Garrett Hartley. So it's something that this organization needs, and I look forward to watching that battle, because with this team, that is a huge kind of competition to watch, and hopefully they can get a guy they depend on.
Well, hopefully they can make the right choice, because Dustin Hopkins last year obviously goes to Washington, and I'm not saying he's all world, but he was as consistent could be. He had some game-winning kicks, and he was kicking off of grass.
Yeah. I don't completely kill the Saints for that one, just because Hopkins was killing Hocker in practice, but when they got in the game, for whatever reason, Hocker outperformed him. So they went with the guy. They did it under the lights, with live bullets flying. So, but obviously they made the wrong choice there, because Dustin Hopkins is doing well. But that part of the game, you just can't risk. You have to have someone you can depend on. And hopefully they finally got a guy. I really like Josh Scobie. In my mind, I think he's the front runner for that job.
Yeah, I would think so. In the offensive backfield, they re-signed Cadet. They let Kyrie Robinson go. Let's take Kyrie Robinson first. Your thoughts on why they let him go? Was it the injury? Larry Holt on my show said today that maybe it could have been some locker room stuff that went down. Was it a combination of all? When you look at the upside of Kyrie Robinson with the injury, you'd have to say, wow, you know what? Much like Chris Ivory, you're letting another good running back go.
He's a good running back, and he's developed well, but his style, and he plays with that crashing style, but he's not an incredibly big back. To me, that's a recipe for a lot of injuries, and I think he's battled that. He had a gruesome injury to finish last year. I don't know of any specific locker room issues, but I can understand if there were tension, just because being around him a little bit with some of and kind of knowing his personality. I can understand if there was some tension with some players, but I think ultimately, the Saints were probably going to move on from him once they decided to not tender him, because they could have really saved him and matched any offer.
Yes.
I don't recall the numbers he got from the New York Jets, but I'm not totally shocked on that one, just because, look, he was a good find, found him on a tryout, contributed to the 2013 playoff run, but he hasn't been available much the last couple of years.
The question is, do they have that back on the team now? That physical back. Is Mark Ingram that guy? What does Hightower have in the tank if they bring him back? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I like Hightower as a short yardage back, and hopefully he's the guy they can bring back. And I think he's somewhat loyal to the organization, basically because they gave him a shot when he was damaged goods. I think Ingram has that toughness element to him. I don't know that that's his MO, so to speak, and he's certainly not Travaris Cadets. But I think they can survive not having Kyrie Robinson. Even if you had to bring in that style as an undrafted free agent, it would be worth it. So I think they can survive the loss of Kyrie Robinson. I really do.
Let's move to the defensive side of the ball once again. And the way things look right now, unless they open up some cap room, they're not going to be really players in free agency in terms of bringing defenders in it. And my big question has always been, look, the Saints are very lucky with the depth of this draft. When you look at linebackers, you look at the defensive line. That's the needs. You go in there, they're going to be players that are going to be in the third, fourth round that probably can still make an impact in the NFL. But man, we saw this last year with a very, very young defense. You saw this last year with a Stephon Anthony and a Heloi Kakaha. It is hard for these guys to come back from the college game, play 16 games, and the physical toll it takes on them. From a mental standpoint, learning the defense and then having to deal with seasoned veterans on the other side of you, especially as a defensive lineman. You got to deal with the seasoned veterans that are playing the offensive line, know every trick in the trade. And then, to me, obviously you want an influx of talent on the defensive side of the ball or through the draft, but man, there's going to be a learning curve for these guys, and we saw it last year. Now, you hope last year's crop will be a little bit better this year, but can you afford to do that with this team staring at back-to-back 7 to 9 seasons?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, again, the price of defensive free agents this year, for whatever reason, has gone through the roof.
It's like the NBA.
It really is. Except for Charles Johnson, who decided to come back for a one-year, $5 million deal and turned down $10 million from the New York Giants, who all of a sudden want to spend a lot of money. Look, I think you got to at least try, right? You got to at least try to be a player on the open market. I think we talked about fairly. If you can get a fairly good contract, no pun intended there. Yeah, exactly. I'll be here all week. But I think that's something to really watch. But like we said, you're at the point now where you're not getting gems. You're getting guys you hope can fit into your system. And also, I think you make a good point. You hope year 1 to year 2 for guys like Kikaha, guys like Anthony, a guy like Davis Tull who never saw the field last year. All of a sudden,
P.J. Williams,
they figure it out. Right. P.J. Williams in the defensive backfield, who they may need just because you don't know the status of Damian Swan. So you got to count on that growth from year 1 to year 2. Hopefully some rookies can come in and make an impact. But I know the Saints have always been patient when it comes to rookies. If you get it, great. But if you don't, they're willing to be patient with them. So all those things combined.
But can they be patient this year? Well, when you don't have money to spend under the cap, when you got $25 million in dead money that have cost you at least 2 to 3 players on the roster, and you have to go through the undrafted free agent route, or again, hope you draft. Can you be patient? They couldn't be patient last year. These guys had to get on the field.
Yeah, look, if they're not ready to play, they're not going to play. It's that simple. They determine that based on what these guys do on the practice field. They're not ready to play, regardless of where they stand with what they have. They're not going to play them. That's just always been their thing. Stephon Anthony moved into that starting role very quickly. Heloi Kikaha proved he can be a contributor. Damian Swan proved he was worthy to get on the field. So Andrew Speed eventually worked his way in. Tyler Davison was a rotational guy who may end up being a base starter this year.
I like Davison.
I really do. I think, and look, Ben Grubbs got cut today on his birthday. I think the Saints won that trade. So I think you want to get these guys in as quickly as possible, but the Saints, and it's probably a Sean Payton thing more than anything else, if they haven't shown they're ready to play, they're not going to get on the field.
Big story last week was the Mike Florio from Football Talk talking about Sean Payton having a contract extension. Again, right now, 2 years left on his deal. You're looking at $8 million a year through 2018. He talked about maybe being here 4 to 5 more years, so maybe 3 years added on to that. That talk has cooled a little bit this week, but your thoughts? I mean, again, back-to-back 7-9 seasons. I know he had his love letter to New Orleans, but at the end of the day, do you reward a coach that, quite frankly, let it slip? He let this organization slip, and you look at the last 2 years of substandard play. Does he deserve an extension at this point?
Hey, look, if it were me calling the shots, no. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, right? 7-9,
Right.
7-9, and you know he was never able to recreate the momentum he started when he got back from the 2012 suspension, where they were 5-0 in 2013, won their first road playoff game in team history. But then it kind of the bottom fell out, whether it was a bit of organizational arrogance or just the fact that they thought they were a lot better than they actually were. But 7-9. 7-9 with 2 years left on your deal, and you're already one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL. If I were in charge, no, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they did that, just because it's been talked about. But if it were me, I would not pull that plug on that.
Is this a situation where Breeze and Payton, you want to try to make sure both guys are going to be under contract for the same length of time going forward? I mean, is there a cohesion there?
Well, with 2 years left on the deal, I mean, how much time does Breeze really have left? I mean,
Right.
I guess you could do that. There could be something there. I know that those two are tied at the hip. They're going to go in and go out together.
Well, a Breeze extension, I mean, what are you looking at, 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, extension, and then last year could be, it could be just a filler year,
Right.
So, yeah, I can understand the logic in that. I feel like an extension for Payton is just a little unnecessary. You're back.
Yeah.
You make good money.
Right.
You're under contract. Let's go get this thing done. And then,
Yeah.
look, if you come this year, 10-6, 11-5, going into the final year,
Right.
of course.
Well, you don't want him going in lame duck,
Yeah,
but if
exactly.
he proves
Get
it,
an
fine.
extension, yeah.
Right, no doubt.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with, a little bit of holding the feet to the fire, a little bit of motivation
players,
here, right?
Players have to do it every year. Every year,
There's
players
nothing
have
wrong
to
with,
do
look,
it.
back-to-back 7-9 seasons, not good enough. So there's nothing wrong with a little accountability there.
Sean, you and I talked about this last week on the radio show, and that's the possibility of the Saints being involved in Hard Knocks. I've already on the record said I'd love to see it. Your thoughts? Do you think this is going to happen, number one? How do you think this organization reacts ultimately if they are involved in Hard Knocks?
It's crazy how the organization is already sort of bracing itself
Yeah.
for it to happen, and they've let that be known to national outlets like Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk. It's almost as if they're volunteering without volunteering, because now it's almost like, oh, well, they're already ready. Maybe we should pick them. But by the NFL, if you were trying to lay low, I don't know that was the proper way to do
Like
it.
in the back of the class saying, don't pick me.
Right, something like that. But I think ultimately, I would love to see it because I like the show. I think there's been a couple teams where, the year they had the Atlanta Falcons, which is horrible. Last year wasn't bad, though. I like the Houston Texans. I'm a fan of football, so in that regard, I want to see it. But also, some access that we don't get to see
Yes.
would be great. But I'm also curious the treatment of the Saints to the Hard Knock crew, because I know Sean Payton is not going to like cameras following him around 24/7. So how much access do they really get? So for all these factors, I want to see it happen. So we'll see.
And so do I. A lot of criticism last week from the fan base about going back to West Virginia. It was originally a story saying they were going to come back and train in Metairie. I'm already on the record saying that the Saints should be training in Metairie. We built the facility for them to train in Metairie. There needs to be a little bit of a ripple effect of the tax dollars flowing back to the state of Louisiana, Jefferson Parish, and of course New Orleans when it comes to that facility. And look, it's state of the art. They got the indoor facility, they got the outdoor fields, but yet they do have one more year at least under contract with West Virginia. Your thoughts on going back to West Virginia? We've heard some that have said that they thought that it makes them soft. Others have said, look, they had a tough training camp last year. There's nothing about being soft there. But what's your overall thoughts about West Virginia? Because you'll be there for 25 days or so.
Yeah, look, they had a contract. It's that simple. And I don't know if they would have had to pay to get out of that contract. Probably would have. Look, that's just not something the organization is about, is is paying money that they don't necessarily have to pay. And if they're under contract, they're going to honor that contract. I know Sean Payton loves it up there, regardless of outside criticism. I think to just equate that with back-to-back 7-9 seasons is a little bit lazy, but I do think it played into the narrative a little bit in 2014. Last year, they could have been in Jackson, Mississippi. I think they would have still been a 7-9 team. It was about talent. But ultimately, for me, and it just kind of is what it is. It's what I expected.
Yeah.
I knew there was a chance they could come back, but ultimately they're going there. And I understand the fans' frustration here because you're not closer to the team. They're kind of away, and it's not a simple drive to get there. But ultimately, they're under contract, so they have to do what they have to do.
Is it good for the team, Sean? You know, again, some have said get away from the family, the girlfriends, the kids. You concentrate on football during that time. It's all football. Some have mused, look, you're at a country club. You know, there's too many amenities they're trying to do an old-fashioned hard camp. You can't even do an old-fashioned hard camp anymore with the NFLPA rules now and the new collective bargain agreement. But you've seen this team there the last couple of years. Does it breed camaraderie? Is it good for the team to be away like that?
Yes, I think it does. I think the days, and I think that people have to lose this mentality of the days of the tough training camp in the NFL, dog days are gone. They're gone. Almost every team, if they're not at the Greenbrier, like the Saints, are at their own facility, which they know the lay of the land. It's very comfortable surroundings for them to be in. So those days are gone. The one thing the one tangible thing that I saw that I liked about being in West Virginia was, let's say the Saints have a practice scheduled from 9 to noon. In New Orleans, they're going from 9 to noon because they had 5 or 6 water breaks in the middle. But in West Virginia, you're going 9 to 11:15. They're not stopping. The practices were much cleaner, much crisper. In terms of the soft tissue injuries, look, you'd have to do sort of an evaluation to see if there were actually more or less in the Greenbrier. I think on the surface, it builds camaraderie, but it certainly hasn't helped. It didn't help in 2014, and last year I just don't think they were that good up until towards the back quarter of that season.
Interesting as far as the coaches go. Bill Johnson was at Alabama yesterday for their pro day. He was handling the defensive lineman. Supposedly at Clemson today, doing the same thing, taking a hard look at the defensive lineman. Saints have made some changes on when it comes to their coaching staff. Dan Campbell comes in, Joe Lombardi comes back, Aaron Glenn, who was a player, he comes back. Talk about the additions to the coaching staff and how you think that will play this year with this team.
Yeah, look, I like it. You know, a guy like Dan Campbell is very well respected. I think you bring these guys in. It's always good to have fresh ideas, fresh eyes, fresh voices. I will say that they seem to be taking Sean Payton. I have the image of him saying this in my mind for some reason. At the Senior Bowl, he made it a point to say, coaching the Senior Bowl, you kind of get an inside look at some of these guys, almost to the point where you could tell he was thinking about it. Who was it? The Dallas Cowboys this year, or maybe another team. I can't recall the second team. They're around these guys all the time, and it's an advantage.
It is an advantage.
So you see them at Alabama doing hands-on drills, Clemson hands-on drills. I talked to LSU a couple days ago. They always do the LSU drills, so they're really in the trenches here doing their due diligence. So I actually think that shows a concerted effort to get better and get to know these players better in the draft.
No doubt. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE-TV with our live broadcast at 6 p.m. Every Friday night, 10 p.m. on WLAE-TV with our rebroadcast, and on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets Friday night at 9. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll open up the phone lines when we get back, 866-3200. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
WLAE is currently looking for partners to underwrite this program and other programs on our station. Underwriting on WLAE is affordable, brings exposure to your cause or company, and helps support our nonprofit mission of providing television programs that educate, inform, and inspire the viewers of Greater New Orleans and Southeast Louisiana. If you are interested in learning about program underwriting on WLAE, please contact us at 504-830-3703.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is our guest tonight. 866-3200 is the phone number if you'd like to get involved in tonight's show. And Sean, Raphael Bush, again, going to be re-signed by the Saints. You had that story. Tell us a little bit about that and your thoughts.
It's not a re-sign yet. They've expressed an interest in bringing him back, which I think is, look, he's been damaged with injuries the last 2 years, but before that he was pretty steady, pretty durable. In 2012 and 2013, 14 he had the bad, I think he had a fractured tibia. Last year he was lost after week 1 in the season opener against Arizona. People don't realize they're pretty thin at safety right now. Under contract, you have Jarvis Byrd, you have Kenny Vaccaro going into the final year of his deal. You have Vinny Sinceri, who's been injured the first 2 years in his career. And then you have Eric Harris, the CFL player.
Yes.
So you don't have a whole lot of depth and a whole lot of talent right there at the safety position. So Raphael Bush, if they can get him back, because I think he'd be a pretty decent price in terms of cost effectiveness, I think it'd be a pretty good move for the Saints.
To the phone lines we go. Lisa's in Lockport. Lisa, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, guys. I love listening to your show. I'm learning so much. But I have a question for you. Any interest in Brett Grimes, the Miami cornerback, coming to New Orleans? He's a good cornerback and on free agency, but way too many distractions and actions from his life. Do you think it's going to be worth the gamble?
Thank you, Lisa.
I'll hang up
I
and
appreciate the phone call. I read something about that today. And one of the reasons why the Dolphins jettisoned him was because some situation off the field with his wife.
His wife threatened to shoot a sports reporter.
Yes.
Over Twitter.
Over Twitter, right.
Yes.
He is a darn good,
very good player.
Darn good
I know.
corner. Do you stay away from a guy like that because, the wife went a little bit cuckoo?
I don't think he's going to be on the Saints' radar. I could be wrong. It's actually a good question because the Saints, he has made some incredible plays against the Saints. When he was with the Falcons, I can recall the 2009 season where he went up for an interception, and it looked like he just kept going and going and going to the point where it's like Drew Brees is putting the ball up 30 yards in the air, and the guy just went up and snatched it. So he is a very good player, a very good corner. But considering they're not set at corner, but it's not their most pressing need, I could see the Saints maybe bypassing Brent Grimes, even though I think he's a very good player.
And I'm with you. I mean, I've always liked when I first saw him lining up for Atlanta, I'm like, oh, come on, what are we going to do with this guy? I mean, come on. But then you watch the guy play, and you're like, oh, man, this guy can play.
He really can.
Really can. Homa and Greg. Greg, welcome to the program. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys, got a question. We always dogged about the Saints and free agency that we've been whiffing in the past couple of years, but if you take a look at our Super Bowl team, it's loaded with free agencies. Drew Brees, you got Darren Sharper, you got Shockey. So, I mean, we made up the Super Bowl team through free agency. So my question is how did we make all those great decisions back then and we keep whiffing now? And I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks. They lost a lot of guys in the front office that contributed to that. Plus, they weren't bargain hunting back then.
Right.
They had cap money.
Right. It's a good point because I went through my list because the narrative lately has been they've spent poorly on free agents and it's crushed them, and it has, but they've done well in other players. Drew Brees, Darren Sproles, Jabari Greer, Scott Vegeta. Darren Sharper was a guy they got very late in the process on a 2-year deal. 1-year deal, excuse me.
Yes.
Back in 2009. Look, it's about evaluation. It's about doing your due diligence in terms of what this guy, can he really be a fit for your team? Because that's the biggest thing. Because when you get a free agent, you're not developing anymore. He has to fit.
Right.
And if he doesn't fit, you find out real quick. And that those guys fit. And for whatever reason, Brandon Browner has not fit. C.J. Spiller has not fit. Jarvis Bird, jury's still out, but you could say right now has not fit. So I think ultimately it's just a matter of your evaluation. You got to be confident. There's always risk involved.
Right.
There's always risk involved. You just got to hopefully get the right guys and they fit your system.
You want to minimize that risk, but you just talked about 3 players that came in as damaged goods. That's also part of the problem.
That's it.
You know, taking a flyer on a guy that's been injured, and because you don't have a lot of money under the cap, saying, okay, I'm gonna go after this guy. In the case of obviously Jarvis Bird, making him the highest paid safety in the NFL, you roll snake eyes on that, and you hope that obviously he's going to come and work out this year. But I'm with you. That is perplexing. Honestly.
We always say, when you spin bad and you draft worst,
right.
That's a recipe for
well,
disaster.
And there's no doubt. And again, as I mentioned before, the dead money is killing.
That's it.
I mean, you imagine if you had $23 more million to spend this year, $25 more million to spend this year. You could be in the mix for one of those defensive players, but you can't now. And now that makes you a bottom feeder. You get the lowest common denominator when it comes to a free agent, and you look at an undrafted free agent to fill out that roster.
Yeah, and look, this is probably the last year for the impactful
Yes.
dead money. Next year it'll be a little clearer, a little less. It'll be much more manageable.
Right.
So you just got to kind of survive this year, and that's why. That's why you need another big time draft again this
Yes.
year, and hopefully you get some contributors.
There's no doubt. It's got to be an 06 draft.
Exactly.
It's got to be an 06 draft. To Kenner and Barry. Barry, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Barry.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I guess I'm thinking about, I might be a bit naive, but with the special session ending just recently, does the state look again at the Saints deal? It seems like there's a lot of money going there, and they have like a great deal. So
Yes.
I'll hang up and listen.
Well, and I can tell you this because I covered this on my radio show as well. Any contracts that the state was under, I don't think they revisited those contracts. Now I know they're going to look at that in the regular session, which is going to be coming up on Monday, and they're going to take a look at every single consulting contract and every contract the state's in. But I don't see the state coming under the state going back to the Saints and trying to rework that deal, whether it's at the Benson Tower or any of the deals that they have that again circumvents them cutting a check to the Saints every single year. So I just don't see it. Remember, that also includes the Pelicans as well. When you talk about again, rather than going with inducements, the creative way that Jendo is kind of paying this team.
Yeah, look, not as well versed in the state budget crisis as I probably should be, though I do keep up with it.
You listen to me 11
exactly.
to 1. Come on.
It would appear to me that that's probably something they don't want to get touched if they don't have to.
Right.
And look, that would not be good for anyone if that were to happen.
Right,
So.
and then the uncertainty with Mr. Benson down the line here. Again, you don't know what you may be in a situation where you got turmoil in a couple years with the front office as well. But I guess the short answer is I doubt they're going to even look at those deals, but they will be looking at again pretty much every consulting contract and every contract in this upcoming legislative session. Cole is in Kenner. Cole, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey guys.
Hey Cole.
Hey, how's it going? I was just, it seems really obvious that we're really not being particularly aggressive towards free agency so far, and really seems like we're just almost saving cap money for the next preseason. So I was just wondering what y'all think is going to be the record for the Saints this year, y'all's predictions. Thanks.
Thank you, Cole. Man, so early, huh?
It really is. And
I
it's
mean,
funny
we don't even know what's
because
going on in the draft.
I tried to just visualize the depth chart. I started writing some names down, and there's just so many unknowns. There's growth, particularly on the offensive side of the ball with Drew Brees and the young crew of receivers. I like the addition of Fleener. You would think there's some growth from year 1 to year 2 with some of those defensive players we talked about last year. If they could just add a quality pass rusher, I think this entire defense gets better. So if all of that comes together, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect 9 or 10 wins. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if it doesn't come together, you're probably looking at another 7-9, 8-8 season.
Well, you surely cannot afford to go into this year's draft and draft someone that gets a redshirt year like you did with Andres Pete.
Right.
I mean, that is almost unconscionable that, again, with all the needs this team had, that they went with a right tackle that could even beat out a seasoned veteran. You put him at the guard position, you yanked him from that position, and I know we were talking about it before going on the air, that they desperately want him to take over that right tackle position, but
I'm not convinced.
Streif's not giving it up.
I'm not convinced. As long as Zach Streif is here, he is going to compete to win that job. And until Andrus Peat shows he is the clear-cut winner, I am not doubting Zach Streif to take that job. So look, I know Andrus Peat, the organization wants him to be the starter next year. Obviously, they drafted him in first round, but I think that's a far from a guarantee at this point.
I'm with you. To Harvey and Kerry. Kerry, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Kerry.
Hey, Eric, how you doing? Sean, how y'all doing?
Good.
Okay, I'm thinking the fact that when the Saints have training camp here in New Orleans, the humidity and everything, I think it put them in better conditions when they play teams like Tampa Bay and Carolina and their place when they have humidity, and especially when they play inside somewhere, they'd be in better condition. What y'all think about that?
I'm with you, Kerry, and I expressed that last week on this show and on the radio show. You look at Miami, they practice in Florida, Tampa, Jacksonville, all in Florida. Atlanta practices, obviously, in Georgia. Houston's practicing in Houston, okay? So there are other teams that do this. I'd like to see them back home. I mean, for a lot of reasons, but, there are some out there that say that if you're at the Greenbrier, that the recovery time is so much easier for these players from a conditioning standpoint, and that was one of the reasons why they sold with going out there, am I right?
Yeah, that was it. It was a soft tissue, it was recovery, it was better climate, it was more conducive to get more work done. All those things have been done, at least as far as I can see. I just don't know how good this team has been over the last 2 years. But, I hate to be casual about it. It just kind of is what it is at this point. And it's just they're going to be in West Virginia, and fans are going to deal with it for at least one more year.
And I think that the fans at this point have expressed themselves that I don't know if this team will go back to West Virginia next year when it's all said and done. There's been enough of an uproar with the fan base, with again, those that have the microphone like myself, to say, you know what, you need to be in New Orleans and dealing with this training camp.
Last year, the first preseason game was on the road. Thus, the Saints, when they played that first preseason game, was it St. Louis? I can't recall at this moment. But they went back to the Greenbrier for another week and had those joint practices. If that first preseason game is at home, they would likely stay and have another week of training camp. And I think that was the year 2 years ago. That was when 2 years ago they had a few practices at the training facility and did the practice at Mandeville High. So if that is I think they need to do that at least. If you don't want to do the North Shore, maybe do the River Parishes or something like that. So I hope at least they can fit that in to the training camp this season.
No doubt. To LaPlace, speaking of the River Parishes, and Brandon. Brandon, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, how's it going, fellas?
Hey, Brandon.
I have a question. Of all the players on the roster right now, who do you think has the most growth as they move forward going into this season? Thank you.
Thank you.
So he said the most
growth from 1 year to the next, last year to this year.
Who should? Who will? Oh,
I got to believe Stephon Anthony, simply because he's been on the field the most. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Ho'oi Kakaha because of the change in defense.
I'm not sure his
year.
position. So he's the one I'm watching the most because I want to see where he physically lines up because he's not a strong side linebacker. He looks lost in coverage. I would think Stephon Anthony, given all the mental reps he got last year, physical reps he got, and everything that was thrown at him, and he was pretty durable throughout the season, I would think he probably comes in a lot more confident this year. Hopefully that projects itself onto the field as well.
I'm going to throw another one at you. Delvin Breaux. I mean, raw last year, really kind of learning on the job. You saw him early, really handsy, and then kind of, got away from that bad habit. He gets a year under his belt in the NFL.
That's a good one.
That's a guy that I think can really grow from.
And look, growing from where
year.
he was last year to this year, I'm telling you, he's got the physical attributes and the talent to be an elite Pro Bowl cornerback in this league. So hopefully that can happen.
Shift gears to the college game for a moment. First, let's talk a little bit about basketball and the LSU Tigers. Very disappointing for the LSU basketball Tigers. Ben Simmons, very disappointing. Not so much on the court. Look, he's been passive at times, very nonchalant attitude on the court. There's no denying his talent, his vision, the ability to pass the basketball. He is going to grow on the next level. He is going to be a superstar in the NBA. But this experiment of the 1 year coming here to LSU just has not worked. Now the revelation of academic problems, which allowed him not to be available on that short list that we all thought he would be on for the Wooden Award. Now they take on Tennessee on Friday. in the SEC tournament. To me, they've got to win the tournament even to get into the big dance. Other than that, they're NIT bound. Your overall thoughts on LSU basketball this year?
Tough year, and look, much like the Pelicans, you had so much momentum going into this season with Ben Simmons, and they made an NC2A run last year. But as I've watched Ben Simmons this year, he's just not an alpha dog. He's just not. He needs someone that you can pair with that's a little more take charge. It's a little more. I don't know. He's not a leader per se. He's just he's not an alpha. He's not an alpha male. He's much more. You use the word passive. He's talented.
Yes.
And he's made some great plays, and he's done well throughout the year. But there are times in the game where he needs to say, "Give me the ball. Get out of my way. I'm taking this game over." And he just doesn't seem to have that quality. And it's a shame because you really had such high hopes for LSU basketball this year.
They're a young team. And look, when you bring that many freshmen in and you're asking them to be able to come in and mesh, maybe it works with Kentucky, maybe it'll work with some of the other big schools that are used to these one and dones. It just did not work out at LSU. If they would have had, Jordan Mickey or Jarrell Martin on this team, they would be a much better team this year because they'd have some leadership. Quarterman has been hot and cold, and again, you thought you might get some leadership from them. Elbert Robinson, honestly, for a 7-footer, has been a disappointment. I mean, you thought he was going to be a cog in the middle. He's done none of that. And got a lot of young guys that are really trying to find themselves right now. And I think the future's bright, especially if again, you can get these guys to learn how to play defense and to play together. There was a lot of finger pointing after the Kentucky loss, something that, again, is the byproduct of lack of leadership in a young team.
Yeah, and look, I'm not sure I want to hear the comparison of Johnny Jones and Dale Brown anymore because that's an insult to Dale Brown at this point because Dale Brown got his teams in NC2A tournaments at a time when college basketball was a lot more competitive. The SEC was a lot more competitive where players stayed. Look, I think the onus is on the head coach to make this thing work. It didn't happen. I don't think he gets fired, but I think it's at least something you got to look at. But ultimately, I just think what a disappointment. And it's tough because it was going up, and all of a sudden crashes back down when you had arguably your best team.
Yeah, and look, the best thing that happened to Johnny Jones is the Les Miles debacle last year. Because with the financial problem the state is having right now, the perception of firing a coach and buying them out when you got professors that are going to be laid off, plus students that may not be able to have degree programs, that's just not going to happen in LSU right now. So he gets a reprieve to try to turn this thing around. But I don't see it lasting any more than one more season. No matter how much great of a recruiter he is, and I know he's the son of LSU, if he doesn't turn it around, they're going to be calling for his head. I
think they already started.
Well, but it'll be much worse.
Yeah.
It will be much worse going forward. Anthony Jennings on the football side has decided to transfer. He will graduate and then move on, so he will be eligible to play immediately if he ends up with another school. Your thoughts on that? Because I think that was kind of the handwriting on the wall, right?
And look, I said it when it happened, when everyone got excited, when he filled in for Mettenberger, had that one drive, that nice deep bomb against Arkansas a few years back. It was one play. And I think ultimately Anthony Jennings fell back to the player he is, and that is an average player, probably a good kid, probably a good student. If you're LSU, I think you kind of wanted this to happen because it's a crowded quarterback room. If he sticks around, all of a sudden you got 5 guys on scholarship this year. That's kind of a lot, and it's clearly Brandon Harris versus Danny Etling for that starting position. It's probably leaning towards Brandon Harris at this point. So, look, you wish him all the best, but not at all shocking in the least.
Let's head back to the phone lines, and then we'll come back to LSU in a moment. Rocky is in Kenner. Rocky, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, good evening.
Hey,
How are
Rocky.
you guys?
Thanks for
I
calling.
just have a question. How you feel about, well, first of all, Peyton Manning enjoys retirement, spend time with his family, but how would you think Mr. Benson would feel him coming into the organization as maybe an offensive coordinator or even just any kind of way of fitting with the Saints? I would think that would be great. How do you feel about that?
Thanks for the phone call. I've heard so many people that have talked about bringing Peyton Manning to the New Orleans Saints in some form or fashion, a minority ownership for the Mannings. First of all, I don't think that'll ever happen as long as Mr. Benson alive, that there'll be a minority ownership. But this is a tight-knit front office. I don't know if they let the outsider in.
Even a guy that's a native son like Peyton Manning, I don't see that. I don't even know if he wants to get into coaching. I mean, obviously he's got a brilliant offensive mind. I think he'd be a phenomenal coach. But sometimes when you're a great player, it doesn't always translate to great coaches because you don't always have the patience you have to have with coaching, because not everyone is going to have the same level of work ethic and attention to detail that you had. But I'll be curious to see what happened with Peyton Manning, with Peyton Manning from here on out, because I mean, look, we lost a legend. I mean, that was one of the best to ever lace him up. So football without Peyton Manning is going to be weird. And what a great retirement speech. And he's come a long way. And I was not a huge Peyton Manning guy earlier.
Really?
When he first came out. But as I've watched his career grow, and especially the latter years, I've really grown a deep respect for him because he really did things the right way. So good for him as well.
For a lot of people that are in my age bracket, in their 50s or older, we've watched him grow up.
Exactly.
You know, we've watched him grow up. We watched that family grow up. And, of course, I have a great affinity for Archie Manning, one of my favorite players of all time. Ran around as a kid with the 8 jersey on, the whole 9 yards. And, you know, I was happy to see him, again, in the beginning of the speech, point out, again, his hometown in New Orleans. I really thought that was gratifying. Boy, Dave Aranda has come in and lit a fire under this defense at LSU. I'm just wondering, he's going with a 3-4. The players seem to love it, but they seem to have a little bit of dearth of talent at linebacker right now. Ultimately, they could be starting a couple freshmen.
You got Kendall Beckwith, who's obviously your senior returning. And then you have guys like Michael Divinity out of John Ehret, Devin White, who was a running back / linebacker. Looks like he's going to play linebacker. Man, he is a physical specimen. I did not expect him to be that big. It was surprising when I read his measurables, considering he was a running back. But what has this defense always been known for? D-line U, DB U. Linebacker U was never really their thing. And now if you're going to make this a linebacker-centric defense, that's interesting because that does not match the strength of your personnel. The strength of this personnel is always in the front end and on the back end. So, but in today's football, you're not really in a base all that much, especially in the SEC. So there's going to be some hybrid there. I'm sure there's some marrying together of schemes. And it's spring. This is where you take some chances. You experiment, you take some chances, and see what you have.
It's tough to talk about the Pelicans these days. It really is. You know, I'll just say this, Sean. This experiment has failed all the way around. I got to believe that, again, if this front office is in tune, I'm talking about management, I'm talking about ownership, they got to realize that they made a fatal mistake in letting Monty Williams go, keeping Dell Demps here, and staying with the team. The continuity has failed. With that said, I'm predicting now, I think a broom sweeps clean at the end of the season. Even though you're looking at Gentry with a 4-year deal, it's not an expensive deal for this team, and I know they don't like to eat contracts. Yeah, but in order to bring the fan base back, I almost think you got to sweep this thing clean and really energize this fan base now with a new general manager who brings in his own coach and start to sell this team once again to the fans.
That's it. That's 100% what has to happen. And you know, when the Pelicans lose, the fans don't get angry. No. They get apathetic. You know, when the Saints lose, everyone's upset for 2 weeks, right? And that's a sign of how much passion they have, and you just don't see that with the Pelicans. You have to put a winning product on the field. Much like LSU, you had that going from last season into this season, and you halted it with the firing of Monty Williams. It was a failed experiment, okay? Let's finally say it. Right. It was the wrong move to make. But I think the organization they have to rethink their approach. Look, for instance, right now, what is Mickey Loomis doing? He's got pre-draft visits, signing contracts, possibly firing an NBA coach, observing Dell Demps in possible trades, NBA salary cap, NFL salary cap. That's a lot for one guy.
Too much.
To me, there has to be a Mickey Loomis for the Pelicans. That's not Mickey Loomis.
I'll take it a step further. There's got to be a Jim Finks that's going to be in there. The Jim Finks of the NBA, that you can turn the keys over and say, build me a winner.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because you got to treat the Pelicans as a professional NBA franchise in terms of, look, they're their own entity. The overlapping, I think I can understand the approach at first, but I think we've seen it's failed.
It's automatic. They're going to be the stepchild out there. Okay, they're going to play second fiddle to the New Orleans Saints. It's going to be that way. They may not want to say it, but they're going to be that way. And there's got to be something done at the end of this season. 15,000 people stepped up and bought season tickets. They're going to be hard pressed to get half of those back into the arena in terms of buying tickets.
Yeah, and look, that's when it starts to hurt. That's where it really hurts, right? So. I know TV viewership was the worst in the NBA.
Yeah. After what? Last year, right. One of the highest?
One of the highest. So you're talking about you've got to do something quickly, and you have a foundation piece. You have Anthony Davis. You cannot screw this up. There are organizations that'll be searching for decades for a player of his caliber. They've got to get it right.
And remember, the max deal kicks in next season.
Indeed it
So
does.
let me take that back. The super max deal kicks in next season. Sean Fazende, thanks so much for being with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets, 9 p.m. every Friday. You can catch me on the radio, 990 a.m. WGSO, weekdays 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com, where you can also catch every single episode of the award-winning Inside New Orleans Sports. Also, don't forget the TuneIn Radio app is a great way to be able to take my show with you anywhere. Download that free app for your smartphone or tablet, and you can take the show, listen to it anywhere in the world. Also, special thanks to our guest, Sean Fazende, as well as the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Kenny Juno, Naila Jones, Philip Williamson, and my director, William Hill. For Sean Fazende, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll see you right back here next Thursday night. Have a great evening.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.